Welcome back to the class, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Traya's Omicron once again. This time it's going to be a little bit more of sad news though. For those who are not aware, Traya's Omicron was just effectively nerfed in game. We're currently in the off season for GAC, so this doesn't affect things immediately for us. But what is going to end up happening is it's going to actually be refunded, which CG doesn't always do that, so that's definitely a positive note. And we need to make a decision about whether or not we're going to reapply it. So that's really what this video is about. We're going to talk a little bit about the nerf in general, what it means, what it's going to affect, whether or not it really should have taken place in the first place. So moving into that territory immediately, they had mentioned first here that essentially, actually this wasn't the first place, they had mentioned that they had seen it and they didn't like it, and then they finally came out and said this, that it was not their intention, or it was their intention when they first implemented it for her to be strong. And this, I get what they were trying to do, but Traya is already a very strong and relevant character. To increase her up even one level, and I really believe the Omicron did more than one level, they were heading into dangerous territory, and I think they should have been able to see this coming, especially when we had larger content creators out there actually already beating variations of Lord Vader with Traya through specific modding and relics and whatnot, that being Fatal, shout out to the Playbook, who again is one of the people who was actually countering Lord Vader with Traya before any of this Omicron even happened. So we did not intend for her to be that strong. As time went on and more player data came in, we recognized this is a special case that needed us to come in and adjust. As much as I hate nerfing, I would love for us to play a game where they never had to do this. I kind of get where they're coming from, specifically in regards to Traya just slapping around Lord Vader. Traya is a very accessible character, and we even did this in this last week where we used an R3 Traya to beat an R9 Lord Vader. And I get when you're considering the investment comparison, I don't ever expect it to be 1-to-1. In fact, I think that's impossible. But Traya is just way too accessible with one Omicron to already beating Lord Vader with Maw at really high relics with a really good datacron. There is a disbalance, or there's an unbalance there, whatever the proper word is. But that's not really important. Whether what I think about it, or really, I mean, feel free to say in the comments your thoughts about it. But ultimately, this is happening. We have to look at this. How can we adapt? What is this going to affect? Ultimately, what is this going to do? So they appreciate our patience, and they're actually, like I said, they're going to be receiving materials back through. So on a positive note, we are now, for the first time, or I think one of the first times ever, have the opportunity to essentially test drive on Omicron before actually being able to commit to it. You can see that mine is currently applied, but it is going to be refunded before the start of the next GAC season, being 5v5. So for those of us who liked it, wanted to use Kill Lord Vader, it's not going to do that anymore. We can just completely ditch it. But that being said, let's actually go ahead and look at what the actual nerfing looks like, which they did mention briefly. They didn't mention it all. Really, this needs a lot of work, but that's another story. Traya's unique Omicron now properly caps at 100% instead of 500%. That alone, this could have been worded a lot better, and I don't want to spend too much time on that. But like, okay, what is getting capped down below? So Traya in her Omicron in GAC, they've now made 2 modifications, one of which wasn't even mentioned, so that's terrible. But while in Grand Arena, if there are no enemy Dark Side Galactic Legends, then all these bonuses apply. So this hard stops countering Lord Vader. Again, if you're able to do like crazy mods and crazy relics against specific comps and in the end game, and you're able to do that now, cool, but this Omicron has nothing to do with that. That's just really Traya's kit is specifically made to destroy teams that like to throw out tons of debuffs, and Lord Vader just happens to be a team that likes to throw out lots of debuffs. So that she has a natural synergy against Lord Vader with or without the Omicron, and that's not exactly what we're going to be talking about, but this is no longer active versus them. And I get that they're just trying to cut it off, and that's one way to do it, because a lot of these abilities are ridiculous, and I think even if they took away 1 or 2 or 3 of them, again, Traya has validity against Lord Vader in general, so the risk of them changing almost anything here but like 1 or 2 things and then her still beating them is very high. So I get why they had to do that. I don't love this, because one of the things that people were considering about theory crafting when this first came out was using Traya with C to beat Lord Vader, which at that point, that's really a pretty fair comparison of investment. Lord Vader is a more expensive GL than C, but at the same time, you have to relic Traya and Omicron, so that it almost works as a balancing, but we can't do that anymore. So again, I don't want to critique this too much just because that doesn't help us. We can't adapt to critiques, but we can adapt to what has happened. So as said in the forum post, this now stacks at a max of 100% instead of 500. This is still really good. Critical damage, health steal, max health, and offense stacked at 100% for the entire counter. That's going to make a difference, not to mention the cooldown factors for Darth Nihilus, Star Sign, and Darth Talon. When they hit below 90% is also still really good. I had a battle in this last month where I brought in Nihilus. Malgus hit Nihilus first turn, dropped him under 90% protection, annihilated Malgus, and that was all she wrote. So there are, like, this is still has a lot to do with it, even though they killed the 500% here, as well as they knocked it out against Galactic Legends. So overall, I like where this is going, but I would like to get more than my opinion in here, and I want to actually look at some hard data that we've seen from the 3v3 season. This is going to be a little bit more difficult because we don't have a 5v5 to compare it to. I talked about a test drive a few minutes ago, and we've been able to do that in 3s. Haven't been able to do it in 5, so I do have some theories about what it's going to affect there and really if it's going to be that good. But I think most of the value in this counter is going to be in 3v3, much similar to we just had another Omicron that came out that was very much like this too, where there was a lot of 3v3 viability. I can't remember. Oh, for a long time ago, First Order TIE Pilot is much better in 3s than he's in 5s. But that being said, this is from this last season of 3v3, and there are some counters that Traya was just always winning. She was always consistently beating Grand Inquisitor. We'll compare that to 2 seasons ago and the other 3v3 where she didn't have the Omicron, as well as Adrad. Like, these were matches that Traya, again, was just winning because she had superior synergy and she's just, again, a really good team. But there are a few fights in here, specifically calling out Malgus ones, where you have these lesser Malgus comps, and I saw this comp a ton this last 3v3 season, because everyone's still wanting to maintain their Darth Revan team, and then they push this kind of really bad Malgus team. Traya's still beating it most of the time, 70% of the time. I beat one of these comps as well myself, and while you can't kind of get into the sphere lock thing, there are ways that you can prevent that if you kind of know what you're doing. And even Nihilus lead here, it wasn't used enough, so there isn't a lot of data on it, but I think Nihilus lead is probably superior here too, just because Nihilus will sit at a much lower health pool, at least in the very beginning before he starts to stack, and the odds of him going under 90% to annihilate Malgus are very stinking high. But this is a really relevant counter, and another one, and again, we're not going to be able to look at all counters, so I want to look at like the higher ones that have, 1,000 battles or 500 battles or something of the sort. One of the other ones in here that I thought was interesting was how well or how much better it did against Dasan Chewie. 65 is really not a good win rate, but if we compare it to the last 3v3 season, how they were doing, it's actually improved by a ridiculous amount. So again, we talked about GI Adrad. Traya is just going to beat those. That's a fact. Her kit does that. Does not need the Omicron. It's not relevant at all. But that being said, if we look down to how she did versus the bad Malgus comps, the counter went up by 20%. That's a good margin, and the 70% is where you can really start to rely on it if you have the mods and relics and everything to go with it. As well, if we look at the amount of people that tried versus Dash Han Chewie, 8% win rate. That's terrible. This should not ever be attempted without the Omicron, but we can see post-Omicron, 65%, again, we're in a margin that might have enough where you can actually be really good. Oh, here's another Malgus comp that they're doing 83% win rates against that. I would almost, well, might be better. I guess Talon does do quite a bit for Malgus, but still, like, that's a pretty expensive unit. When you do start to get into a lot more, or even this one's really good too. Not so much here, but again, we can see the win rates versus Malgus comps, and there's just going to be some they're going to be in the dirt. For example, with Malak or Darth Revan, because there's way too much fear going around constantly that they just can't keep up with it. But for the most part, we are seeing a relevant change there. Now, I do want to talk about 5v5 a little, just because where is Traya's place going to be? And I personally just couldn't find a relevant counter that she's currently being used on offense that needs help. Like, if we look through, again, last 5v5 season where Traya's doing things, these are not low win rates. She's beaten Inquisitors for 89%, a load of Geo teams, I guess, as well as, I believe she does very well, is still doing very well versus Dash. These numbers are a little off because the Dashcron was still active last 5v5, so the 74 really isn't 74. It's in reality much, much higher. So I don't see a big reason. I guess this might be a reason for Adrad if you were wanting to do that, but again, this also isn't the best Traya comp. This could have been a little bit better. So there is a small room for improvement in 5v5. What I really want to see is how big of a pain she's going to be on defense. If you put Savage with the comp, which is probably what I'm going to do, spoiler for all my opponents, Ami Traya and Ami Savage are going on defense for me, just because there's not really a cheap team to beat it. Everybody's wanting to try Gas versus Malgus in 5v5 right now, and if they drop that, these 13% win rates for Bounty Hunters or Galactic Legend would be great, or the 6% win for GG. A lot of these comps just aren't going to go super far. See if we can even filter and try to find some more. It doesn't look like we are. There's not a lot of people using Traya without Nihilus and Scion, but even just the two of them, they're asking for a lot bigger teams, and I think the Omicron can help, again, narrow a few of these down. I don't know if it's necessarily going to stop Gas, just because the team, again, relies so much on debuffs going to your team, and Savage generates a lot of buffs, which actually it really hurts Traya, because Gas is going to be gaining a ton of offense that way. So we've already kind of said it here and there what our overall thoughts are on it, but I am going to be reapplying this. I think it's going to help margins in 3v3 where Traya is already okay-ish at beating certain teams like Malgus or Dashhan Chewy, and I want to help bridge that gap. And as well in 5v5, I think it's going to up her defensive viability. I will say that this is not as high as a priority as it used to be when it was beating Lord Vader. So you have to look at your entire roster. We've done a video like ranking all the GAC Omicrons, where they rank. I do encourage you guys to check that out. Maybe we can even link it in the top corner over there. But go through the list, look at what you have, and really compare it to, can you do something better? Because ultimately the game, as far as roster building goes, whether it be Omicrons or Zetas or Gear 13s or even mods, you have to look at not what is good, but is this better than that? Because the way the game is currently running, again, Omicron, Zetas, whatever, there's a lot of really good things in the game. There are a ton of really good characters. The power creep has kind of gotten squished over the last year or two. That has helped there be a lot of shared validity through a lot of teams. So if your Traya's Gear 11, maybe this isn't the time to pump Rob, to Relic her, to throw the Omicron on just for this. But if you've already gotten most of the work done anyways, like I have, where I already have the Sith Trio at R3, it's definitely going to go back on for me for reasons previously stated. But that is going to be it for today. Let me know your guys' thoughts, what you think about it, if it's still going to be any good, where you see yourself using it. And as always, stay awesome.